There's a lot of role-playing and game master tools that people assume we all know about already. Dice for random numbers, tables for encounters, and clocks. But what are clocks, and why are they really useful? Let me explain and also point out you could be using them perhaps in more ways than you think. I've been a game master for more than 40 years, and I have to say, I've improved a lot over the years. Sometimes from analysing my own successes and failures, but other times from reading great ideas in one game and thinking, hey, I can use that elsewhere too. Like a lot of gamers, I first encountered the idea of using clocks in Apocalypse World, where the feel was very much of the doomsday clock. A way to track things happening in the background, a reminder to not let the world become static and frozen, but for it to advance, change, decay, whether the players want it to or not. In Apocalypse World, the clocks look like this, a direct homage to the doomsday clock, with the idea that until it gets to the 9 o'clock position, everything is still avoidable, and then the remaining sectors are the escalation of the trouble you haven't nipped in the bud. When the GM needs to make a move like announce future badness or show something happening off screen, they can look at the clock and narrate the current situation. There's a long queue at the water filters because they're running very slowly today. There's a plume of smoke on the horizon in the direction of multi-story. And then if the PCs don't act to prevent things getting worse, the filter breaks down and needs hard to scavenge parts. Or the gang who have raised the other settlement start heading towards yours, and so on. Until 9, the threat is avoidable if you act. 9 to 12, it's inevitable, brace for impact, and at 12, everything is hitting the fan. Between adventures, the GM looks at the clocks, advances a few, and the game resumes. In most later games that ran with the idea, the visual link to the doomsday clock has been lost. It's now often suggested that you have a number of ticks, and then the consequence unfolds. I have seen a suggestion that in a chase scene, there could be a 4-tick clock for both sides, and your successes add to the getaway clock, but your failures add to the get-caught clock. That can work. I'd suggest in that specific situation you don't just make 4 rolls on the same thing, but the GM narrates specific obstacles that could slow you down, so the thing being tested isn't just how fleet of foot the PCs are each time, but it might be a bit needlessly complicated to have 2 clocks for that. A clock tick is, in this model, now also a consequence of bad rolls and characters' poor choices, and not just inaction. But one thing the example has, which I think sometimes get missed, is that it's a player-facing clock, not a secret or GM-facing one. The original clocks in Apocalypse World are, as far as I read it, secret. It's the same mechanic as is used for tracking the character's health, but the GM doesn't show the clocks for the threat tracking. Your world is organic, and threats blossom. It's the magic of GMing. But while this is useful, it's another thing to keep away from the player's eyes. And I don't think that's always needed. A player-facing clock is where you have the clock visible to the players. They can see you filling in the segments as you narrate what has changed each time. Another clue has been found by the inspectors on your trail. Missed payment means the bluecoats are losing their patience with you. Will they metagame if they know a threat is further off? Let them. Let them frolic all summer long like grasshoppers while you fill in the clock for the ants. This is a story and this is a game. Knowing they're putting off dealing with something is narrative gold, especially for their in-character conversations with each other. The third type, and this is the one I think sometimes gets missed in the jump from secret to player-facing, is GM-facing. Tell them what the clock is. When they screw up, miss rolls, need a consequence, tell them you're filling in a tick on the clock and narrate what that looks like in world, but don't show it to them. How many turns are left on the handle before the jack-in-the-box leaps out? With each of these, it's important to make sure the players know there's something going on. There is no point filling in a segment or sector or tick unless you can give them details of what has visibly changed. With a secret clock, they might not initially know what the threat is or what the clock striking will look like, but they have to have had clues earlier that something was up, so they can get that wonderful, dreadful feeling of, we could have stopped this. I also try to make sure I keep the original Apocalypse World idea of the severity ramping up. If the clock is, the aliens invade, then the 6 clicks can't be 5 mundane things and then invasion. Each one should build on the last, not just, you notice again that. Clocks being a visible mechanic players can see in front of them on the table is no more intrinsically immersion breaking than, for example, rolling colourful plastic polyhedrons. You should not be afraid of that. And they do bring a lot of wonderful tension to the table. Even in a dungeon crawl, you could have one called Reinforcements Arrive that you tick through as the fights get noisier. And as a GM, they're a great thing for keeping track of world elements, but also for those moments where your mind goes blank. Look at your clocks and let inspiration hit you. If the character fails a roll in the tavern, it's fine to cut away to a foreshadowing scene across town for a brief look at what the arch enemy is up to, gathering their forces to crush the party like the weevils they are. If you do want to know more about foreshadowing, actually, then I have just the video for you on my channel page. Here's a link to it now, and the subscribe button is the final tick that tells you it's the end of this video. I'll see you next time.